Hey everyone, welcome back to JP's Budget Collecting and our weekly look back at the hot comics from 6 months ago. This week we're looking back at the hot comics from July 26, 2024, and I'm recording this on January 22nd, 2025, a little earlier in the week than normal. As always, I give you those dates so you know when this information is actually most relevant because the market is always moving and changing, and an announcement tomorrow might change some of these prices. So, also as always, we're looking back at the CBSI Hot Top 10 and the Comic Tom Key Collector hottest trending comics in the week. So what are we doing here? Why are we doing this? Basically, we all get in that stance of FOMO. There's something going on. We get news about a movie or books or a hot new book coming out, and we chase it and we pay maybe more than we should, but everybody's buying it. We got to have it. And this is about really looking to see 6 months later, going back and saying, should you have been patient? Was it worth buying in when the hype was going on? And seeing what we can learn from what factors made those books hot and what factors actually last, which ones don't. Should we be patient? Should we buy in? And hopefully we all make better decisions about what books we chase in the moment and what books we're patient on by doing this. So with that, I've got one quick announcement. I do still have channel memberships. I will list my members at the end of the video, but right now here are the tiers if you want to join the channel and just help me out to continue to make these videos. I would really appreciate it. So with that, let's dig into the 17 books and see what we can learn this week. First up, we got Barbarous, #1 on the list for the second week in a row because we got news that Patrick Stewart was cast as the voice of Axe in this movie. There's some other casting news, but that's clearly the main actor, well, at least that I'd heard of, that was cast. Raw copies on this last week when we talked about it was like a $15, $25 book. Now it's by this point it was a $30 to $60 book, which if you've paid any attention to option or casting news is way too much, and now it's a $5 to $35 book, which is still pretty well, but only one 9.8 sale for $45. So yeah, this is down in a trap. No reason to have chased this. If you bought in on that first week, you did okay, but if you waited till that second week to buy in on this one, you overpaid for this particular book by quite a bit. Next, we have Minor Threats, #1. This Patton Oswalt written story was optioned by Netflix, and it caused it to hit the list at $20 to $25 for raw copies. A 9.8 though was only going for $50, but yeah, $20 to $25 for raw copies. Now raw copies are running at $5 to $15, with more of them closer to $5 than to $15. So this is another trap, another book that it was not worth going after in the moment. All right, next we have movie news. We got King Spawn #1. This is hitting the list because Todd McFarlane was talking at San Diego Comic-Con, and then he put out, released a photo of the screenplay, the draft screenplay's cover, so the front page of the screenplay, and the title of the Spawn movie that we've been hearing about for at least a decade is going to be King Spawn, so that's why people were chasing this particular book in the moment. I have said now for several years, I will believe we get a Spawn movie when we get one, and won't believe it beforehand. And but supposedly there is a screenplay. So back then, raw copies were going for $6, so not really high prices on this pretty high print book. 9.8, $50 to $75. Now it's a $3 to $6 book. 9.8, $40 to $50. So a down in and I'll be back. No reason to have chased it in those moments. Next, we had another San Diego Comic-Con prompted book. We had Death's Head #1. This was hitting the list because Marvel released an exclusive Legends figure at SDCC of this character. So people went out and bought a bunch of the comics. That doesn't make a lot of sense to me, but okay. Raw copies were going for about $15. A 9.6 went for $75. Now it's a $5 to $15 book. Again, people didn't way overpay, but no reason to have gone after this. Down in and I'll be back. The character, honestly, I don't remember ever having heard of before this. So next, we had a CGC signing putting a book on the list. We have Batman: The Dark Knight Returns #1. This was in the list because both Miller and Jansen were going to be doing a signing together. So this is one of their projects they did together. So people were putting this book on their list. Average back then, this was a Tom average, so I didn't get a chance. Again, this was not a week that I was doing the cash or trash. Average back then was $200, 9.8, 700. Now it's a $50 to $200 book raw, 9.8, 6 to 800. So we're going to call this steady. I'll be back. Probably get a few deals compared to back then, but pretty close to what this book just goes for. All right, now we're going to move into a few covers. We did have a few covers. Had more books before we got to the covers than normal, but first up we have Zatanna, Bring Down the House, #2, the Jenny Frison, the 1 in 25 Virgin variant. This one was back then, this 1 in 25 was going for 40 to 50, so right around double ratio, not usually a great sign for one of these 1 in 25s. In addition, also a trade dress existed of this one, so, and then I think there was a foil also, so there was multiple options for this particular cover. Now it's a $25 to $40 book, so down and I'll be back. No reason to particularly have chased this particular Frison book. Next, we have NYX, #1, the ARGM 1 in 100. This is another Virgin variant that a trade dress existed for, so that always kind of limits the top end on these because people can get a version of this cover for much cheaper. But this 1 in 100 was going for 125 to 200, which is actually pretty good for a 1 in 100 that hits this list, but it did not hold. $60 to $100 now. 9.8, 1 to 160. So down in a trap on this one. No reason to have chased this book back then. Still pretty good ARGM cover, but I'm a bit of a sucker for ARGM. So next, we have a couple of covers / buzz books. We have Annihilation 2099. #3, the Pete Woods 1 in 25. This one was going for, so we were getting some new 2099 characters during this series, which is why this was. These 1 in 25s were hitting the list. Last week we talked about #2, the 1 in 25 of #2. This week it was an $80 to $90 book for #3. Now it's a $10 to $30 book, so that's a dumpster fire. No reason to have chased this book at all. And then we have Annihilation 2099 #4, also hitting the list. This Pete Woods 1 in 25, which is the first 2099 Surfer, was going for 60 to 85, so a little less. And it's doing a little better, but still down. 10 to 50, although that 50 is a bit of an outlier. But yeah, it's more like a $20, $30 book. 9.8, 130, only one sale on that. So still a dumpster fire. Still no reason to have chased either of these books in the moment. All right, next we have one cover. Not sure what was bumping this one particularly at this particular time, but we got Spectacular Spider-Man #101, a classic Spidey cover from the Black Suit era, one that a lot of people love. Raw copies back then were going for 30, 9.8 going for 400. Now it's a $15 to $70 book for raw copies. Like high grade ones are going pretty high. 9.8 still have backed up 275 to 310. So we'll just call this steady. I'll be back. It might cost you a little more for a raw copy than it did back then, but it's probably a little less for 9.8. So next we have Hulk #1. This is the third week in a row this hit the list. First cover appearance of Red Hulk. This is back when we were getting footage for the Captain America movie that's coming out here, in less than a month. So we're getting close to that movie. Back then, Red Hulk was going $80 to $100 for raw copies, 9.8, 350 to 400, and now, so that was first trailer there at San Diego Comic-Con. Now it's a $60 to $90 book, 225 to 290. So this is a down and I'll be back less than a month out from the movie. This has been the pattern I've been trying to tell you guys about for years. The highest peaks on these Marvel movie books and stuff are the announcement and the trailer. The movie itself is actually tends to be lower values on these books. Next, we have Nova #1, and we got an announcement that Kevin Feige confirmed at SDC that we were going to get a Nova show. Not which Nova he didn't confirm, but that we were getting a Nova show. So people were back on the first appearance of Nova, first appearance of Richard Rider. 100 to 130 for raw copies. 9.8 back up to 850 to 1,000. And now it's a $25 to $100 buck. Raw, 9.8, 680. So down in a trap. This book has been a yo-yo for a decade. And eventually maybe we'll get Nova, but yeah. There's been no reason to chase this book anytime there was an announcement. You can always do better when nobody's talking about it. Next, we have Uncanny X-Men number 251, and this starts, the rest of our list is all focused on the release of Deadpool and Wolverine. It just had come out, so that's what put all these books on the list. X-Men 250, Uncanny X-Men 251, hitting the list because of an Easter egg in that movie. Raw copies 20 back then, 9.8, 195. And this one's actually doing better. It's now a $15 to $60 book raw. 9.8s are $250, $260, really, with multiple sales right at those two prices. So up and worth it. You could borderline get into straight cash, but it's not up that much. But yeah, this is a book that I guess is getting more love post that movie, even though it really only appeared as an Easter egg related to this cover. Next, we have Wolverine number 88, first Deadpool versus Wolverine. Back then, as the movie was coming out, $30 to $100 for raw copies. Now it's $20 to $90, 9.8, $250 to $350. For some reason, they didn't report the 9.8 values back then. But yeah, steady, worth it. Book hasn't really changed that much. Kind of just where there's that. It's still down from like when the movie first got announced and stuff, but like from when the movie was released, it's been pretty steady and worth it. Next, we have Deadpool, Merc with a Mouth, number 7, first appearance of Lady Deadpool. Been on the list a bunch over the last couple months in the lead up to the movie. By this point, it was doing 125 to 175 for raw copies, 9.8s for hitting 450. Now it's a $50 to $85 book, 9.8, 225 to 300. Yeah, that's down in a dumpster fire. On those raw copies, more like trap on the 9.8s, but no reason to have chased this. Lady Deadpool did appear in the movie, but it was a pretty small kind of cameo type part and not really a major role. So, next, we have New X-Men, number 114, first appearance of Cassandra Nova. And interestingly enough, this was the main villain of the movie. I thought portrayed pretty well. And even when the movie came out, this was an $18 book raw, 9.8 120. Way less than Lady Deadpool, who was just a cameo. And Cassandra Nova is now a $5 to $20 book, 9.8, 80 to 130. So we'll call this a steady and I'll be back. This is just a low-end key. She was much better in the movie than a lot of these other characters, but then hasn't really related to any kind of real value on this book. And then last on our list is NYX number 3, first appearance of X-23, Laura Kinney. Obviously, Daphne Keane reappeared in the movie. We'd known this going in. She brought back her Laura Kinney role. Raw copies 450, 9.8, 1300 back then. Now it's a 350 to 550 on a raw copy, 9.8, 800 to 1200. So it's down, and then I'll be back on that 9.8 a little bit. It's taken a little bit of a step back. Quite a bit of variation in 9.8 sales recently. But yeah, for the most part, 6 months out, these Deadpool books are actually doing pretty well. They're fairly steady, except for the Lady Deadpool book. But yeah, they're actually have held their own, maybe because they just had value just in general anyway. So with that, I want to thank you guys for watching, and we will catch you next time. Later.